And at 10, the Night of Lightning. The gates are sealed. The attackers have retreated, mostly. There are a few stragglers left who wish to see their kingdom burn. They think they can be a hero. They think they'll save their kingdom. Pathetic. Their kingdom is ours and shall remain as such for eternity. The storms here are common, even more common than a battle in a tavern. However, the wonder of this village is at its end. We've had fun, but I think it's time to take another, and begin our reign over the regions. We have Unova, now time for another. Wait, why did the storm just get worse? Just as I think that, I see it. The darkest shadow one could ever think of flying over the clouds. It's as dark as Darkrai, but not him. I see a faint amount of blue shining through the clouds. It's almost like a god. And then you hear it. You have lost your way. Return to your righteous path or face annihilation. It's as if it just spoke to our brains. We look at each other and everyone else heard the same. We will fill this land with our righteous fury, I cry at the beast. That was the wrong idea. It started. The lightning. It came down as if on its own, with the fury of 100,000 men. Every time a bolt vanished, another one came down, as if God had started to eviscerate the human race. However, all around us the world was normal. It was a bright and sunny day, but not over us. As my men fell, I see him descend. Zekrom. And a 9 demise. It's only happened once, the evisceration of the Kalos region. It happened oh so long ago that I don't even think the elders remember, but I do. I am not like most elders. I am AZ, and I remembered when the legendary Pokemon Yveltal finished its first life cycle. It's unknown when it was born or created, but when it was finished with this mortal plane, it didn't go quietly. The destruction was vast, and the casualties greater than even the Pokemon War which occurred after. Kalos, the region which this Pokemon called home, was destroyed, leveled by what can only be described as a catastrophic event. The death of this Pokemon sucked the life out of the region, as if the region sacrificed itself in order to preserve the Pokemon. Yveltal was saved and created a cocoon of sorts that acted as a shield for the coming few thousand years, until one group, known as Team Flare, decided that disturbing the Pokemon that caused the end of the region was a good idea. Of course, they didn't know about the evisceration, they only thought those were stories, but alas, I wait for the destruction of the region once more. And if Yveltal won't do it, I'll do it myself. If you guys are enjoying the video, be sure that you hit that like button because it really helps us out and lets us know what you want to see more of. Thanks. And it ate quake. The ground shook beneath my very feet. This wasn't uncommon for Hoenn. Thanks to the legends, however, it always made us worry that the legendary Groudon would rise again. The ground trembles once more. This is more than just an ordinary aftershock. Something's wrong. I rush outside and see the storm forming. It's like the old legend. I grab my coat and head to the den, where there are officers set up preventing entry. I guess this is no mere storm, and the legend is true. The legendaries Groudon and Kyogre will rise again. They start evacuating once they hear the roar. The sound is amplified because of the cave, and then we hear another roar coming from behind us in the ocean. They usher us out of the city, leaving behind everything we own, and getting as many as possible onto Route 24. For a minute, the downpour stops. This makes people think that it's safe, and despite the police doing their best to hold them back, a man begins to return to his home. That's when Groudon bursts out of the ground, dropping a boulder on him. That's the day we left Reptile City, and the last day that it was left standing.
Number 7. My friend Banette. Her favorite gift that she had gotten for her birthday was the Banette Polka doll. It was so cute. She promised that she would take it with her everywhere and never leave it. But years passed, the doll became worn and was swapped out for newer toys. Eventually the girl who owned it got older and parted with the doll, throwing it into the trash. The trash, Banette thought as she lay discarded. I don't think so. When the girl got home, she saw Banette sitting once more on her bed, surrounded by a bunch of other dolls and plushies which had been torn apart and decapitated. She was too confused to react as the Banette seemed to come to life, surprising her. It leapt, feral, attacking her and mauling her face. She was dead before she could do anything. Never again would she abandon any of her dolls. Number 6. Charmander, is that you? This story happened to a friend of mine. My good friend Angie lives out in the country, pretty remote, and not a lot of people live around her and her family. It's just her and her dad and her little sister. They have a well out back, which is where all their water comes from in their house. I've never been a big fan of their water as it kind of has a funny smell to it. Whenever I would sleep over at Angie's, if I showered in the morning, I'd have to plug my nose because I found the smell so gross. Angie never seemed to notice it though. I guess she was just used to it. But one day, she did notice. For the first time ever, to her the water smelled metallic. It felt hot too. She noticed while washing her hands, even in cold water, it was like it stung her skin. She decided to go out and check on the well. When she did, a bright light was coming from it. She opened up the well and looked down. Something bright was glowing down there, so she lowered a bucket and pulled it up, eager to see if something maybe had fallen into the well somehow. The contents of the bucket spilled out onto the grass, and she watched as the water made the grass smoke, scorching it as though it were acid. A creature tumbled from the bucket as well, and Angie, who was a big Pokemon fan, thought she recognized it. It looked like Charmander, but this Charmander looked angry and somewhat shriveled. It cried out. She reached out a hand, attempting to reassure the creature it would be fine. Charmander was her favorite Pokemon after all. The creature tilted its head, took in a little breath, and looked down at her hand, exhaling a bright, hot flame. Her hand caught fire. As she patted it on the ground, attempting to put out the fire, the creature scrambled out into the woods. Dragon or real-world Charmander, whatever it was, has yet to be seen again by Angie, but she still bears the scars from when it burned her. While it may never return, she'll never forget. Number 5. Wartortle at the End of Time. My friend Charlie's brother Travis loved playing Pokemon. He prided himself on being the best trainer and made sure he always collected every single Pokemon in the games. He always bragged that he was the best in Pokemon battles, no matter which Pokemon game you were talking about: Red, Diamond, Ruby, Silver, Pokemon Go. He prided himself on being number 1. Or he used to. He doesn't play anymore, and when I asked Charlie why, he told me that something had happened to Travis while playing. Apparently, while playing Leaf Green, Travis said the game glitched out. The screen went black and then opened up on a very old-looking Wartortle. The Wartortle said that he was an immortal Wartortle who had been alive since the first days of Pokemon, and its spirit had lived even beyond that. The Wartortle survived in the game by feeding off of gamers' souls. It found that the better someone was at the game, the more nourishing their souls were. It had come, it said, for Travis's soul. Number 4. The Haunted Woods. The woods near my house were always quiet, until one night. I was walking home after playing at a friend's house. It was getting late and darker outside by the second, so I decided to take a shortcut through the woods. That's when I started to notice a whistling sound. I don't know why, but I was curious. I felt compelled to wander towards it, as though it were calling me. Later, I would realize why. It was the children's spirits. They only wanted to play. They only wanted more friends. But I became lost in the woods. Lost as they had been lost before me. I never found my way out, collapsing on a stump, starved and thirsty as my organs began to shut down. My spirit merged with the stump then, became fused to it, and I too joined the whistling in the woods with my new friends as another ghostly phantom.
Number 3. Genesect. Genesect? More like genocide. That monster is unstable and should be put in the Pokemon graveyard with the others. They were already temperamental to begin with, but their leader, the Red Genesect, is ruthless. He's the one who started the original Pokemon War, the one that claimed the lives of millions of Pokemon. The Pokemon who put their lives on the line should be the ones who remain, not these goddamn unhinged monstrosities. They've nearly leveled all of Castelia City at this point. The psychopathic group led by their leader won't let any human live. I've managed to hide inside the debris of one of the buildings, but the moment they suspect something, I believe it will be the end. They don't seem to speak aloud, not even saying their name. I'm guessing it's some form of psychic communication, or something of the electronic equivalent, since they look like machines. Oh no. While writing that last line, I moved a piece of wall, probably around the size of a medium rock, but that was enough for the Genesect to hear. And it too, framed. Officer, I swear I didn't do it. I wasn't even in Nimbasa City last week. I've been in Castelia City for the past month doing my research. What, filling up that Pokedex? You seem to have the Pokemon that appear after Mistralton, which means you have to have had passed through Nimbasa. Why would you go back? Because I missed stuff. Come on, there has to be an explanation for this. There is. You did it. We caught you on the cameras, you monster. What do you mean, monster? Here, look at this and then tell me that's not you. It may look like me, but it's not. What do you think? Arceus just created another version of you to tear that old man apart? No, it wouldn't have been Arceus. What about the unknown? They were safe in Relic Castle. What about the Weather Trio? Unaccounted for, but we know it's not them. How? They don't have this kind of ability. What about a Ditto? A Ditto wouldn't be able to do that to a human. This was animalistic. How do you not remember? What if it was Zoroark? We hadn't considered that. Well, we can't have you blabbing now, can we? The illusion fades as Zoroark steps out from the shadows and reveals the bloody stained claws of the one, the only, Arceus. Finally, in number 1, Dream of Darkness. It started as sleep paralysis. It's a fairly common phenomenon, at least for me, when your mind wakes up but your body doesn't, and you're conscious and can see around you but can't move. Some people also have a blind spot while this happens, and most people believe it to be their sleep paralysis demon, since it can look like a person, but mine didn't. Mine looked odd. It had legs, but they were long and pointed. The arms were similar in a way, with wide hands thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. It had what looked like smoke coming off its shoulders, and the hair was similar. It stood there staring at me, like most sleep paralysis demons do, but then it started moving. It reached out a hand, and I watched it grab my face, as if trying to wake me up, but instead I fell back asleep. It fades to black and I'm back in my room. The demon is gone and I can finally move. It's still dark out, but my clock says 11 a.m. Concerned, I walk down the stairs and call out to my parents, asking them what's going on. They say nothing, so instead I call out to my sister. Nothing again. When I get down, I see why they didn't call. They were what can only be described as spread out across the room. The ceilings and walls were red, and their heads were all removed. I close my eyes, and I'm back in my room. The demon is gone, and I can finally move. It's still dark out, but my clock says 11 a.m. And at 7, Hoopa. Hoopa and I were friends. I thought we were best buds. There's no words to describe the kind of connection we had. That's until I died, at least. In the Pokemon world, some kids who die end up turning into Pokemon. I myself got lost in the woods while out on a walk with Hoopa, so I ended up becoming a Phantom. If I was a Kadabra, I'd be able to let Hoopa know who I am, but they can't understand a Phantom. After I died though, Hoopa kinda lost it. It changed to its unbound form since it was no longer by my side and terrorized as many people as possible, even some of the search parties for me. I'm starting to worry about what it will do next, and if they ever cared about me in the first place, or if it knew what would happen in that forest. It's been 10 years now, and Hoopa is with another boy. They came back into my forest. You'd think that Hoopa would avoid that since what happened last time, but then I see it smirk. It knows what's about to happen. Hoopa quickly opens a wormhole and heads through, but not before looking at me, now a Trevenant, and winking. And at 6, good night. I used to have trouble sleeping. I tried all that I could, sleeping pills, NyQuil, more pills. I even tried Pokemon, but even Jigglypuff couldn't put me to sleep. But then I found her, Meloetta. Meloetta is like my soulmate. We work together in harmony. She helps put me to sleep, and I help her with her mission. Everyone is sound asleep now. They were all having such a hard time. With the sun out, it's nearly impossible to sleep. But now, they can all sleep for as long as they want. Meloetta helps me sleep. She sings to me. It's like everything is a dream. Such a perfect life. Singing and sleeping is essentially the life of my dreams. Halfway through number 5, Pokemon. Pokemon is so addictive. It's like the most illicit substance on the planet, but it's legal. It's like PETA and the devil had a baby and then they turned it into a reality. I have plenty of Pokemon. I can't always keep them in their ball, but whenever they're out, they seem happy. They love to go outside and run around in the backyard. Luckily, I don't have any flying types, otherwise they might fly away. My parents think I have too many Pokemon, but you gotta catch them all, right? Even Pokemon Control thinks I have too many. They keep trying to take them away, but whenever they do, I go back, get my Pokemon back, and grab another one while I'm at it too. It's like Pokemon Control is Team Rocket and I'm Ash. I tried putting a Pokemon in my PC a while ago, but it didn't work. It just started smelling funny, so I threw it out. Pokemon Control can take that one. My parents seem concerned, but can't they just see that I'm having fun with my life? Gotta catch them all. And then 4, the fire. It was late. Probably around 2 in the morning. The thunder was cracking, the lightning was flashing blue, and we saw a figure fly overhead. When it flew over the brass tower, that's when it caught. The fire spread quickly, despite the rain we thought would prevent it. My dear friends were inside, Sparky, Rainer, and Pyro. They loved to play in that tower, jump from post to post, battling and training themselves just for fun. I never thought it was an issue. But when the fire spread down, they were goners. Rainer tried to protect them. Sparky even took a lightning bolt for them, but nothing worked. Even Pyro stood in the flames and tried to absorb them. Nothing. Luckily, Ho-Oh had a spot for them in his plane, and now whenever I see one of the legendary beasts, I smile and shed a tear for the boys I lost oh so long ago. Perhaps, after the plug is pulled, I'll be with them once more.
Number 3, the mystery door. I had never been to this place. It was a department store that somehow appeared in a cave when I was playing Pokemon Red. I didn't know how it got there or where it came from, but I was curious. I went inside. There was a shop owner who looked normal, as well as some items for purchase. At the back of the store was a door, but when I approached it, the shop owner stopped and asked me, "Do you wish to open the mystery door?" My only option for responses was no. To which he'd respond, "Okay, if you change your mind, let me know. We can always talk about the cost to do so." I left the store, but every time I played would end up visiting it again during my session. It was such a weird place. The options for my answer always seemed to be the same, until one day they weren't. I noticed a second option. There was no, and then just an ellipses for another response. I chose the 3 little dots, to which the shop owner didn't respond. I was given another chance to choose between the same 2. This repeated a few times until I saw my character shudder and begin to vomit. Out of my insides emerged a tall, spindly creature shrouded in mist with bright red, glowing eyes. It stood tall with a twisted grin. "Time to pay the price," it said. I heard the echo of its voice in my mind. Number 2, Berry Forest. One time while I was in Berry Forest, I ran into a random girl there. Nothing too bad happened, but it was definitely a really creepy encounter. She asked me to come with her and become one with the forest. Then I watched her move into a tree. Cut into the tree was a perfect shape for her body. "You don't need to leave ever if you join us," she told me. Number 1, Trading Places. My friend had loaned me their old Game Boy Color as my Switch had broken down recently, but it was covered by a warranty still, so I was just waiting to get it back, fully repaired. I used to love playing my Game Boy Color when I was younger. They gave me a few games along with it. Among them was a Barbie Genie game, a Legend of Zelda game, but I settled on a Pokemon game to play. However, the cartridge didn't look like any Pokemon game that I remembered. It had a picture of an intense-looking Ditto on the front. Weirdly enough, the color of the Ditto was off and seemed to more match the color of the Game Boy instead. I paid it no mind, thinking that with age, maybe the color had changed, or maybe the cartridge was a little dirty. I popped the cartridge in and booted up the handheld console. Suddenly, I noticed it began to shift in my hands. I watched as the Game Boy appeared to melt out of my hands before emitting a bright, blinding white light. I shielded my eyes and turned away, and when I opened them, I noticed before me stood a giant Ditto, but shaped like me. Its face was wrong, but as it looked down at me, it appeared to fix that, matching my very own expression. Its skin was a little more pink than mine, but otherwise it was a perfect copy. The Ditto reached down and picked me up. I noticed that I couldn't move. I didn't have arms or legs. I noticed a border as well in my vision. "Finally free," it said, my own face smiling down at me.
And number 10 is Lavender Town Syndrome. This turn of phrase, also known as Lavender Town Tone or Lavender Town Suicides, is extremely shocking to learn about. Back in February of 1996, when Pokemon Red and Green were released in Japan, they experienced a number of suicides and illness in children between the ages of 7 and 12. Apparently, these suicides came from the high frequencies that were played in the theme music of Lavender Town, and it's rumored that at least 200 children committed suicide, with many others developing illnesses and afflictions. It's known that children have very sensitive hearing, so the developers soon changed the tone of Lavender Town. And to study this phenomenon, the developers created a software to analyze this audio. But when it played, it creates images of the unknown, a character in the game Pokemon. This is a terrifying revelation because that character didn't even appear until later games, and is said to translate to "leave now." Number 8, Pokemon Lost Silver. After buying a used Pokemon Silver game, this player was weirded out to find the game they continued into from the previous player had 999 hours put into the game, all 16 badges and 99,999 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon in the Pokedex. The only Pokemon in the player's arsenal were unknowns that spelled out the word leave, and a Cyndaquil named Hurry. After landing in a dark cave, the player used Cyndaquil's flash to see and soon regretted what they saw. The walls were covered in blood red. The player landed in a new dark room and then again tried to use the flash, but then it just said Hurry has fainted, and the unknowns now spelt out the word he died. Now his character was white with bloody tears coming from his eyes, plus his badge count kept changing. First to 24, then to 32. The unknowns now spelled dying. After engaging in a battle with a Pikachu, his Pokemon didn't say fainted, it said it had died. Then the Pikachu also died. The character even comes across the Pokemon Gold sprite that says goodbye forever. He then appears in a small room filled with graves, and all the gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. The unknowns then spelled I'm dead. A final text came up on the screen that read RIP, and the player could not escape, no matter what they pressed. It seemed as though this hacked copy was telling a story of a young trainer who, despite his efforts in becoming a Pokemon master, still couldn't avoid death and being forgotten by the next generation.
Number 7. Augmented reality. John used to love playing Pokemon Go. He played every day on his way to work and every day on his way home. He even bought a separate phone just for playing at one point. With this new phone, he always had the AR experience on. He just thought it was so neat to see the Pokemon in his real life world. That is until one day, when a Pokemon seemingly jumped from the game into his real life. As he lowered his phone, the Bulbasaur seemed to blend into reality. It snapped at a nearby rider on the streetcar, and he leaped in their path to protect them, accidentally falling over into them as the streetcar lurched to a stop. "Excuse me," the disgruntled rider exclaimed in anger. I was just the Pokemon," John stammered, gesturing down towards it, but the person didn't see it. Much of his life continued in this downward spiral, with the Bulbasaur remaining unseen by anyone else except for John, and continuing to ruin his life, causing him eventually to lose his job, his family, his home, and ultimately, in the end, his life as well. Number 6. Pokemon Creepy Black. This creepypasta tells the story of a character who loves to collect bootlegged versions of Pokemon. They have been playing for years and enjoy seeing what kind of fan-altered games they can find and enjoy. One day they come across a game referred to as Pokemon Black. This bootleg version of the game introduced the player to Ghost. Ghost is a Pokemon who only has one attack, called Curse. In Pokemon Black, the player watches as other trainers and Pokemon appear to vanish when exposed to Curse, implying perhaps that they have passed on as a result of them being exposed to Ghost's attack. No matter which way the player approaches the game strategically, it always seems to end with a one-on-one battle after the end of the game, with the player's character becoming an elderly old man who is then forced to fight against and ultimately lose to Ghost in the end. They have one attack that they can use in their defense, which does no damage to their longtime Pokemon and now opponent. Struggle. Number 5. From Within. This is a true story, one that warns of what can happen when the line between fantasy and reality begins to blur, when you become so invested in games that they become like real life. Isaiah played Pokemon more than he did anything else. Whether he was at school, at work, he would find ways to play. He preferred baths to showers actually, because it freed up his hands to play while washing. He was obsessed, to say the least. Isaiah had always wished that he could live life as though he were a real trainer. It was one day when he was in the bath playing Pokemon Red that he got more than he had bargained for when it came to that wish. He was trying to catch a Gengar, but during his attempt, a cutscene he'd never seen before started up and was triggered. The Gengar he saw in front of him looked hyper-realistic, more realistic than his console should have even been able to show. "Do you truly wish to become the best trainer?" the Gengar somehow asked him. He selected the option yes, but the Gengar demanded he speak aloud his answer. "Yes!" he cried out. The Gengar then seemed to leap forward toward him and then emerged from the screen. It grabbed his face in both hands and pulled him through the screen. And the game console splashed down into the bath. Isaiah was gone, but the game continued. Number 4. Nightmare Attack. This was an attack I noticed my Kadabra had one day while playing in a game. Not sure if it was an error or a glitch or exactly where it came from. I just know that this happened to me and I don't know why. When used, Nightmare would cause no harm to the Pokemon, but after the battle I noticed the trainers were different. They would pass out near the end of battle, either when I was about to lose or run or just upon victory even. They would faint, and then when I left and tried to wake them up, I would get this creepy flash of them smiling and foaming at the mouth. like some kind of jump scare card. This glitch or error, I don't know what it was so bad that I found myself unable to play my game, or any Pokemon games anymore, without thinking about it. It's not only haunted my own nightmares, but constantly haunts me when I think of the franchise. Has anyone else had this Kadabra attack or knows where it comes from?
Number 3. Braid. This is a creepypasta that is great if you're looking for a good Halloween story to read. It occurs around Ilex Forest and is told in 3 separate narratives that come together to create an unsettling atmosphere. Standing between the player and Goldenrod City, they know they have to enter the forest. An old tale about the history of Ilex Forest involves villagers bringing baskets of food to the edge of the forest, and we learn that it is left there for a witch in exchange of fruitful harvests each year. However, we learn that if they look at the witch while she is using her magic, the blessing will become a curse. This tremendous creepypasta also goes into detail about the leader of the nearby town's daughter and her curiosity leading her to a curse from the witch, trapping her in the forest and thus becoming the voice of the forest. That's why when you enter Ilex Forest, you're warned, and even the trees seem to be weeping and moaning, just watching as the witch turns each new helpless child into a gift to the voice of the forest. Number 2. Best Friends Forever. As much as I enjoy the hacked games and the dramatic stories that people tell using Pokemon locations, this one is especially freaky. It's a tale of a girl and her best friend. That friend was a Torchic named Blue. The player would always play with her real life friend Talia, but when Talia said that she didn't want to be friends with her anymore, the player just transfers that companionship to her Pokemon characters. Playing night and day, one day Talia snatched her Game Boy out of her hand and threw it to the ground, and was about to crush it with her foot before the game just lets out a loud screeching noise. Talia turns pale and runs away, and her friend Blue's stats also change as well, from likes to sleep to angry. And after moving on to new Pokemon games, the player said goodbye to her old friends and started anew with a Mudkip named Red. As she continued to buy new games, she would bring over her best players from previous versions until she remembered she forgot about her old friend Blue. When starting up her old Pokemon Ruby game, a strange message came on the screen that just said, "You promised you wouldn't replace me." This is where it gets weird. Then she begins having a conversation with Blue, where the Pokemon is responding on the screen to everything she says. Then Blue asks if Talia is still mean to her, even saying that it got very angry. The player decides to carry Blue over to the new game, but first, she's asked by her mother to pick up a pie pan that she lent to Talia's mother. The girl runs over to Talia's home, but there's no answer. And when she hears a scream, she runs into the house to find Talia with burn marks all over her body and a knife in her neck. Her parents were also hung in the basement. She finds Talia's little brother hiding, who tells her that they were just watching TV when a loud beeping noise went off, and Talia was just dead. She rushes home, and on her DS is a text from Blue saying, "She was mean to you. She deserved it." She wakes up around 3 AM to a beeping noise similar to the one Talia's brother heard, and it's Blue. All of her Pokemon begin disappearing, and a text appears, "Now we can be best friends forever." Suddenly she wakes up in her bedroom, but she doesn't recognize anything. She runs downstairs to see a lady she doesn't know, and the woman turns and says, "Good morning, honey. You're finally awake. Our neighbor Professor Birch is anxious to meet you."
Number 9. Pokemon Go Experience. My friend and I love playing Pokemon Go in the park near my house, but we've never ventured into the woods nearby. One day we decided we'd check it out and try to catch some Pokemon in there. We were having fun playing, but became a bit turned around and lost. We weren't worried though, as we both had our phones and both had a strong signal on them. As we talked and wandered around exploring, I looked up to see my friend. He was crying with his head in his hand. He wouldn't look at me, but told me the stairs behind me were scaring him. Stairs, I wondered? But we're in a forest. But sure enough, when I turned around, there they were, a set of wooden stairs that looked almost new. He told me not to climb them, but I wasn't scared and I wanted to check if they were real. They were. When I got to the top though, I felt lightheaded and dizzy. I turned around, but it almost felt as though my body was moving independent of me, as though I was experiencing sleep paralysis and couldn't control myself. Then I noticed giant, humanoid pale spider legs in the corner of my eye, climbing up a tree next to me. I recovered control and bolted out of the forest with my friend in tow. Needless to say, I have yet to return to that park anytime soon, and my friend still won't talk to me because he's still so freaked out. Number 8. Pokemon Gray. One day when I was going to play Pokemon, I noticed a cartridge among my games that didn't seem familiar. I'd never seen it before. On it was the name Pokemon Gray, and it seemed to be made out of something other than plastic, something smoother and harder. But it fit in my console just fine, and I booted it up to check it out, as I'd never remembered getting it or hearing of Pokemon Gray ever before. The load screen and gameplay were different. Everything was darker, and all the characters in Pokemon seemed to be skeletal versions of themselves. When I went to select my starter Pokemon, Professor Oak told me after I picked the skeletal Bulbasaur that there would be a price, and that Bulbasaur was not complete. He needed something from me. My bones. I shut the console off immediately and threw it against the wall. When I got enough courage, I went to retrieve it and checked out the cartridge. It had a crack in it, and that's when I noticed that it was made out of a different material than the others. It was made of human bone.
Number 7. Trapped in a cave. This creepypasta is more sad and disturbing than just scary, but still, it's a good one. It's a tale of a player who comes across a horrible sight in a cave. The only light seemed to be coming from the tail of a Charizard named Ruby. Ruby was with her trainer, but something was wrong. The trainer was missing his arm and both legs. Ruby appeared to be sad and afraid. The trainer repeatedly kept asking the Charizard if it was hungry, but Ruby denied, but its rumbling stomach told another story. The man insisted, eventually placed his arm in between Ruby's fangs. Eventually, the Charizard closed its eyes and bit off his arm, leaving only a head and torso. Eventually, the trainer falls asleep and the Charizard keeps crying and crying, as if it knew what was going to happen next when it got hungry. Number 6. Abandoned Loneliness. This creepypasta revolves around a hack copy of Leaf Green, given to a friend, and begins with an EV called Loneliness, except the E in Loneliness is missing for some reason. And at the beginning, the player's name is Leaf, and follows a number of very strange events and signs that take place in an area called Emptiness, not Pallet Town. After exploring, the player notices that this town is filled with these NPCs that appear to look like ghosts with blood coming from their eyes. The ghost constantly gives strange and evil advice to the character as they progress through the game. As fog covers most of the landscape, the player notices the tiles on the ground spelling out cryptic messages. One of the ghosts even says, "Can't you do better?" The signs and ghosts continue to warn of a friend who betrayed loneliness. Leaf even sees the game's rival Blue pleading to not believe the ghosts and to run before they get you. The player finds out that Blue abandoned loneliness, and after several creepy messages, including one from Brock who said the ghost tricked him, the player shuts off his game. Months later, he picks it back up again, but everything is different. His character is called Sora, and his Eevee is a different Pokemon named Unwanted. He eventually enters into a battle with a wild Eevee named Loneliness, and when he defeats it, the player turns into one of those ghosts, and is now said to be cursed as well. Suddenly, he's in Pallet Town again, where Red and Blue say that Leaf got the brunt of the curse. He interacts with a signpost nearby, and it just says, "Loneliness was put to rest, RIP." Number 5. Disabled. So far, a lot of these creepy things coming from the Pokemon series have a lot to do with strange sounds or frequencies, and this one's no different. Our player in this story was absolutely in love with two characters, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff. When she buys Pokemon Soul Silver, she immediately sets out to capture a Jigglypuff. This takes some time though, but eventually she manages to catch one in the Safari Zone. No matter how high she leveled her new Jigglypuff, she always kept her sing attack because, well, she loved to hum along to the tune. Still set on getting her second favorite Wigglytuff, but understanding how difficult it was to even find Jigglypuff, she decides to put a high level Pokemon on the wireless trade board in hopes of someone trading a Wigglytuff. And well, she gets her wish, and someone trades her, but oddly the Pokemon is called Disabled in all caps. It has one move, Sing. Before entering into a battle with her new Pokemon, she loads up a couple TMs like Hidden Power, Swagger, and Explosion. She enters into a battle with her new Wigglytuff, but for some reason, Sing is disabled. She tries using Hidden Power for Wig, but it fails. She tries to run, but it fails. The words "wants to fight" comes up on the screen. Then, it gets weirder. Wigglytuff begins doing its own actions. Repeatedly, she sees "disabled" try to use Sing. Sing was disabled. Again and again and again this happens. The enemy suddenly appears sick, as if poisoned, and then flees from battle. But Wig doesn't stop. The text box fills the screen. Disabled use struggle. It struggled. Then more, saying, "Why can't I sing? Sing. Sing." The word "sing" now is flooding the screen. Then randomly an option appears saying, "Can you sing? Yes or no?" The player hits no several times, and suddenly the speakers let out just let out a large, loud screeching noise, causing the player to drop her DS. Having enough of this weirdness, she tries trading the Wigglytuff, and when a trade appears, she hits yes several times, begging for it to hurry. When the trade goes through, it was for a Cyndaquil. Its name was Hurry. Number 4, Strangled Red. This creepy hacked game of Pokemon Red was found in a trash bin of all places, and it tells the story of a trainer named Steven and his best friend, a Charizard named Miki. Oddly, when the player starts up the screen, it just reads Pokemon Strangled Red version. Realizing it was a hacked game, he plays anyways. Although, it won't let him continue with the previous player's game, so he hits new game. The player's name was automatically set to Steven. He starts with a single Charmander named Miki, and everything about this game was just a bit different. His character had a smirk and long hair, his rival was actually his brother, and the starter bedroom had 2 of everything. The game played normally, just the storyline was different. Using the Charmander, it quickly evolved into a Charizard by level 25. As soon as the player reached Lavender Town, things started to get weird. He entered into a battle with his brother Blue, and once they were successful, they had a dialogue back and forth at the house that was strange for a solo game. The NPC wanted Steven to trade him his Charizard Miki. After the no button wouldn't work, he reluctantly hit yes. That's when the game froze mid-trade. He turned it off, and when he restarted, the only option was continue, except he didn't have the Charizard and was greeted with a text box that read 1 year later. When he checked his menu, the character was different. Its eyes were blank, the smirk was gone, and his long hair looked messy. Also, Miki was dead. The player pieced together that this character named Steven is actually the previous champion that then becomes your rival in other games. The town seemed to mourn his loss, with almost presenting him with compassion for this disturbed character. And at this point the game takes over, so the player takes Steven to Lavender Town, where all of the NPC trainers seem to ignore him completely, all saying, just go. Sometimes dead is best. To read the full story though, and ending as well, look up Pokemon Strangled Red. It's far too gruesome for me to continue from there.
Number 2, missing Pokemon trainers. My friends and I have always loved playing Pokemon Go since it first came out. We're all Team Valor. One of our favorite things after the school day is done is to walk home together catching Pokemon, battling Team Rocket, hitting up Pokestops, and stopping to battle at the local gym. It's kinda like our routine. We do it every morning on the way to school, meeting up to walk together, and at the end of every school day on the way home. We all have different favorite Pokemon that are our favorites for leaving in the gym. Mine has always been Emboar. However, one day when we walked home, we noticed one of our friends in the group was missing. Maybe they went home early, I thought, because they got sick in the middle of the day. But when we stopped to hit up the gym without them, we also noticed that their Pokemon was gone, despite the fact that all of ours remained, as no one had defeated our hold on that gym. The next day our friend wasn't at school either, and when we all decided to stop by their house at the end of the day to check on them, we noticed the house appeared abandoned. Even weirder, another of our friends from the morning had seemingly disappeared from the beginning of the school day to the end. We also stopped by their home and it seemed also abandoned. Their Pokemon was also missing from the gym we'd taken that morning. We all have since stopped playing, and we're all still here, but the other 2 and their families seem to have disappeared without a trace.